Hey guys, tonight we're heading somewhere ancient, somewhere cold, damp, and flickering with light. You're standing on a grassy hill in Ireland, 1,000 years before anyone thought to say trick or treat. The wind is sharp, the smoke stings your eyes, and a bonfire taller than a house roars before you. Around it, people dance, half in celebration, half in superstition. You can almost smell the peat and hear the low murmur of something half human, half forgotten. It's the night of Samhain, the Celtic festival marking the end of summer and the beginning of what they called the dark half of the year. And if you're not careful, you probably won't survive this one. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge closer to the fire, the heat licking your face as sparks rise like stars escaping. It's late October, and the last of the harvest has been brought in. The Celts believed that on this night, the halfway mark between fall and winter, the boundary between worlds thinned. The dead might walk among the living, and unseen spirits could slip through the veil. To protect themselves, the living kindled massive hilltop bonfires, sometimes two at once, driving cattle between them for purification. The smell of burning herbs and animal fat mixed into a thick, smoky perfume of fear and faith. A druid, cloak dark as the sky, chants over a bowl of glowing embers. You can feel the ritual rhythm in your chest, though you don't understand the words. Samhain wasn't just about spirits, it was about survival. This was the edge of the year, when nights grew long, food scarce, and hope fragile. The fire wasn't merely symbolic, it was warmth, protection, a communal heartbeat against the unknown cold. Historians still argue whether these Samhain bonfires involved sacrifice, animal or otherwise. Some say it's all later Christian propaganda, designed to make the pagans look barbaric. Others whisper that a few bones found near ancient sites tell a darker story. Whatever the truth, what's clear is that the night blended fear with comfort, the kind that makes your skin prickle even as you draw closer to the flames. You hear laughter, strange, unsteady. The villagers toss bits of food, grain, and drink into the blaze, offerings for the gods and the dead. Someone beside you mutters that their grandmother always leaves out bread for their ancestors. The logic is simple. If the spirits are fed, maybe they'll leave you in peace. And if not, well, at least you tried. In the distance, smaller fires dot the hills, each one marking a family or clan huddled together against the endless dark. The whole landscape glows and pulses, gold, red, black, like the breathing of some ancient creature. For a brief moment, you almost believe the veil truly has thinned, that beyond the smoke, there might be eyes watching back. But even as superstition dances around you, there's coziness here. The fire crackles. Someone passes a skin of cider. Children, too young to fear the dead, chase each other in the grass. This was how people made peace with the inevitable, through warmth, community, and ritual. The unknown becomes bearable when shared beside a fire. You catch the faint melody of a harp, maybe just wind against wood. Legends say that on Samhain night, the great Celtic heroes of old would return to visit their descendants. Ghosts, yes, but friendly ones mostly. If they came to your hearth, it was a blessing, not a haunting. Some families even set extra places at the table. For the ancestors, they'd say, though the chair always stayed empty. There's a story about the Druids walking from house to house, carrying embers from the sacred fire to reignite each family's hearth. Imagine that! An entire countryside slowly relit from one central flame. Cozy, right? It's almost like the world's first group candle lighting, just with a bit more chanting and fewer pumpkin lattes. You feel a tug at your sleeve, someone motioning you closer to the edge of the firelight. They whisper about the Ausi, the fairy folk who roam free this night. Beautiful, dangerous, unpredictable. They might bless your harvest or steal your cow. There's no telling. The villagers respect them, fear them, but never forget them. And so you stand between fire and fog, warmth and darkness. The first Halloween, though no one calls it that yet, isn't about horror or candy. It's about balance, life and death, comfort and fear, community and isolation, all braided into one long autumn night. As the fire burns low, a voice in your head wonders if, centuries later, when kids in plastic vampire capes laugh beneath electric porch lights, something of this feeling still lingers. Maybe every candle in a pumpkin, every flicker of orange against the dark, is just an echo of this ancient hilltop fire, the same old human instinct to find warmth in the unknown. The wind shifts. The last sparks rise into the stars. You pull your cloak tighter and take a deep breath, tasting smoke and frost. Tomorrow, winter begins. But tonight, you've survived the turning of the year, and perhaps something older has survived with you.
The fire's glow fades behind you as you follow a narrow path down the hill where mist clings low and thick across the fields. The night is damp, the kind that seeps through your cloak and nips at your fingers. You can hear the crunch of dry leaves underfoot, the faint hiss of wind through the heather. The villagers around you have grown quiet. No one wants to be too loud after the fire dies. They believe the veil is open now, thinner than a spider's thread, and something is listening. You pause at a stone wall, and for a heartbeat, you swear you see movement in the fog. Just the flicker, like a shadow remembering how to be human. The Celts called this in-between time the hinge of the year, a threshold when the world of the living brushed against the other world. They didn't think of it as purely evil, more like a time when rules loosened. Spirits of ancestors could wander home. Mischievous fairies could slip through cracks. And yes, darker things too, the ones that didn't remember they were once alive. So people left food out. Bits of bread, fruit, even milk poured on the doorstep. Small bribes to keep the dead content. You imagine your ancient self setting down a little loaf and muttering, "Please don't knock over the chickens again, Grandpa." Historians still argue whether these offerings were meant for human souls or for the fair folk, but it hardly matters. Both needed to be fed, and neither liked being forgotten. As you move deeper into the fog, a small cluster of huts comes into view. Their doors are marked with strange chalk symbols, loops, spirals, and lines drawn to confuse wandering spirits. One family has even hung rowan branches over the doorway. It's not exactly Home Depot Halloween decor, but it gets the job done. Inside, you'd find families huddled around dying hearths, whispering stories to keep the dark entertained. Someone might tell of a cousin who saw a ghost on the road to Tara. Another swears that last year the cows refused to give milk because an ancestor hadn't been honored properly. You sip a bit of warm ale, and the air hums with superstition, half fear, half comfort. Humans, that seems, have always preferred to explain the unknown rather than leave it nameless. A whisper rides the wind curling past your ear. Maybe it's a trick of the air. Or maybe, just maybe, the dead are near tonight. That's the unsettling beauty of Samhain. It didn't separate the living and the dead into neat categories. It was more of a family reunion, minus the awkward small talk. You could honor your loved ones, but you also had to protect yourself from the wrong kind of guest. Some villages held silent feasts where everyone sat in reverent quiet while empty chairs symbolized those who had passed. Imagine that. No laughter, no chatter, just the sound of chewing and the soft pop of the fire. It was their way of saying, "We remember you, but please don't stay too long." In one legend, the goddess Morrigan, part battle queen, part phantom crow, flies across the night sky on Samhain, choosing who will live and who will join the dead. You glance upward, and a real crow cuts through the mist. Its cry echoes once, sharp as flint. You pull your cloak tighter. Cozy, right? Nothing says, "Sweet dreams," like the feeling you're on a cosmic draft list. But that's the paradox of these old nights. They mixed dread with intimacy. The people felt close to their ancestors, close to the land, close to something bigger than themselves. Fear for them wasn't an intruder. It was part of belonging. And you, trudging through this fog, start to understand why Halloween would one day become both a party and a seance. It's that rare emotion where unease feels strangely warm, like goosebumps under a blanket. Down the path, you spot a cluster of lanterns flickering. A few villagers have gathered near a small stone mound, leaving offerings there too. Bones, berries, bits of cloth. Someone hums a melody that doesn't quite fit any known scale. It sounds ancient, circular, the kind of song that might loop forever if you let it. The wind hums along, and for a moment, it almost feels like the earth itself is breathing. Historians debate whether Samhain was more agricultural or spiritual. Was it a harvest festival or a ritual for the dead? Archaeologists point to stored grain pits and burned animal bones. Folklorists point to ghost stories and taboos. The truth, as usual, is probably both. The Celts weren't choosing between dinner and the afterlife. They were blending them, because to survive winter, you needed both food and faith. A dog barks somewhere in the distance, its sound swallowed by the fog. The villagers murmur that dogs can sense spirits before humans can. You feel a faint prickle on your neck. Maybe it's the chill. Maybe it's something else. Either way, you find yourself walking faster, your boots soft against the wet grass. And yet, there's comfort here too. In the rituals, in the repeating patterns. Year after year, the same offerings, the same songs, the same fear. There's safety in knowing what comes next, even if what comes next might be a ghost at your door. It's oddly domestic, the supernatural, neatly scheduled. By the time you reach the riverbank, dawn is bleeding faintly into the clouds. The fog begins to lift, revealing the smoldering remains of the great fire behind you. The world feels clean again, like the night has exhausted. You realize something quietly profound. Halloween, before it was Halloween, wasn't about horror at all. It was about keeping life and death in polite conversation, never letting either side dominate. You sit on a cold rock, watching the mist curl away like smoke from an extinguished candle. You survived the night. The spirits have fed, the ancestors are appeased, and the world can continue spinning towards winter. Somewhere, far off, you hear laughter again. Faint, friendly, and human.
The fog thins by morning, and the hills breathe again.
damp grass glinting under the first gray light. You stretch your legs, but your journey's not over. The villagers are busy preparing for another kind of defense now, one made not of bonfires or offerings, but of masks. You follow them down a muddy path to the edge of the settlement, where the smell of smoke gives way to the tang of freshly turned earth. The people are quieter than usual, and their faces are hidden behind crude disguises, animal heads, soot-streaked cheeks, and cloaks turned inside out. It's unsettling and a little funny, like a costume party thrown by people who've never actually seen one. This is where the mischief begins. You soon learn that after Samhain's solemn rituals, a lighter sort of chaos takes over. Once the spirits were honored and the dead appeased, the living felt free to play a few tricks of their own. Historians still argue whether this mumming and guising came from pure superstition or pent-up harvest joy. But either way, it gave people an excuse to act wild without consequence. You watch as a group of children, faces blackened with soot, knock on doors demanding food or drink. "For the good spirits," they cry. The villagers laugh and hand over scraps of bread, apples, or bits of honey cake. Refuse, and you might find your gate unlatched, your cow's tail braided, or worse, your fire mysteriously cold in the morning. The first unofficial trick or treat, centuries before anyone called it that. There's something strange and charming about it all. People believed the disguises fooled wandering ghosts into thinking you were one of them. A clever idea. If you can't beat the spirits, blend in. One woman even smears her face with ashes and says it keeps fairies from recognizing her scent. You're not sure if that's real magic or just ancient deodorant. The line between sacred and silly blurs as the night unfolds. You see young men wearing horse skulls, their eyes gleaming through the sockets, dancing around fires with eerie energy. It's both terrifying and hilarious, like Halloween's ancestor having an identity crisis. Some scholars think this was meant to scare away evil forces. Others say it was just the medieval version of teenagers TPing houses. Either way, the idea stuck. Sometimes pretending to be scary is the best way to stop being scared. You imagine yourself slipping on one of those rough masks, maybe something made of bark and straw, and instantly you feel different. The chill of fear becomes thrill. The night turns from threat to playground. That's the real secret of these disguises. They let you meet fear halfway. You can dance with it, joke with it, even sip cider beside it. That cozy tension, the warmth inside the chill, that's the same emotional cocktail you get today watching a scary movie under a blanket. Someone near you sings a half-remembered rhyme, something about souls wandering until dawn. It's off-key but oddly comforting. Around you, the landscape shifts. The fires become fewer, the laughter more distant, and soon you're walking along the edge of a forest. The trees rise like black spires,
their branches clawing towards a pewter sky. You think of how fragile the boundary feels between civilization and wilderness, between mask and face, between life and death. Historians debate whether Samhain's disguises were worn to celebrate the dead or to protect the living. Maybe both. After all, when the world feels uncertain, a mask can be armor or liberation. Some anthropologists even call it a ritual of controlled fear, the same psychological balancing act that still makes haunted houses so weirdly fun today. You're scared, but you're safe. It's cozy chaos. At one house, you see a family hanging small carved faces near their doorway, turnips hollowed out, candles flickering inside. The faces are grotesque, but almost comical, grinning wide and crooked. The smoke from the candles curls through the carved holes, giving the illusion that the turnip is breathing. A villager tells you the lights keep away the wandering souls. You nod, though part of you suspects it's also just a convenient nightlight for people afraid of bumping into something not quite human. A young boy runs up to you, wearing a fox pelts on his head. "Guess who I am?" he grins. You shrug. "A fox spirit?" He shakes his head. "No, I'm my uncle. He died last year." Then he laughs and runs off, before you can decide if that's morbid or adorable. Either way, you realize that play is part of the ritual too, death made manageable through laughter. The sun finally dips again, and the mummers start to gather for a final performance. They dance and mock each other, acting out tales of kings, ghosts, and farmers. Everyone watches, cheers, and throws bits of grain into the air. The flames cast long shadows, stretching the performers into giant shapes on the hillside. It's crude theater, but it's got heart. Somewhere between laughter and fear, a tradition is born, one that will someday evolve into parties, parades, and pumpkin-lit porches. You feel the warmth of the crowd, the shared heartbeat of the ritual. In a world where winter could mean death, every excuse to laugh was precious. The masks, the pranks, the songs, they weren't distractions, they were medicine. As the firelight flickers out once more, the night settles into that familiar hush. Somewhere behind you, a fox howls. You wonder if it's just an animal, or one of the masked dancers who forgot to change back. Either way, you smile. The line between costume and spirit is thin, and that's half the fun. You pull your cloak tighter, your mind buzzing with the mix of fear and comfort that defines this night. Halloween, you realize, has always been about transformation, turning the unknown into something human-sized, something you can laugh at, something you can love a little, too.
Morning again. The air feels heavier this time, still smoky from the last of the fires, but quieter, more orderly. The revelry of masks and laughter fades as church bells ring in the distance. Their sound cuts through the mist like iron through silk. The world is changing, and so is your Halloween. You trudge down a muddy road toward a small stone chapel. its roof patched with moss, its doorway carved with a rough wooden cross. Inside, robed monks chant softly, candles flickering against cool stone. The rhythm is familiar, like the fires from the night before, another kind of ritual, another attempt to tame the unknown. This, you realize, is how Christianity met Samhain, not with a sword, but with a hymn. Centuries pass in the blink of an eye. You're still standing in the same landscape, but the language has shifted, the gods renamed. It's the 8th century now, and the church is trying to fit every local custom into its growing calendar. So Pope Gregory III declares November 1st as All Saints' Day, a day to honor every holy soul who's ever made it upstairs. The night before, October 31st, becomes All Hallows' Eve. And yes, that's the seed from which Halloween will someday sprout. But here's the twist. People don't stop celebrating Samhain. They just layer the new meaning over the old, like painting a fresh coat over a haunted wall. They still light fires. They still wear masks. They still leave food for the dead. Only now it's for the saints, or for the poor souls in purgatory. It's a neat trick of spiritual rebranding, and it mostly works. Mostly. You step back outside, and a villager nods at you politely, clutching a wooden rosary in one hand and a bundle of herbs in the other. That, right there, sums up medieval religion perfectly. Half church, half hedge magic, all faith. The world might be getting more civilized, but deep down, people still believe in the whispering dark, the thin places, the restless dead. And really, who can blame them? The church offered salvation, but it couldn't promise a good harvest. Historians still argue whether the church's takeover of Samhain was deliberate or accidental. Was it a clever strategy to absorb pagan traditions, or just a happy coincidence of timing? You suspect a bit of both. Christianity, for all its grandeur, has always been good at adopting local flavor. Why fight a bonfire when you can bless it instead? You find yourself watching a priest light a small flame near the altar. For the souls awaiting grace, he murmurs. It's quieter than the great Samhain fires, but the meaning isn't so different. A light in the darkness, a reminder that warmth can reach beyond the grave. Outside, children wander from house to house, singing rhymes for the dead. Soul, soul, an apple or two. If you've got no apple, a coin will do. They carry little lanterns and wear cloaks against the chill. Their baskets fill slowly, one door at a time. You can almost hear echoes of trick or treat hiding inside the song. A woman invites you in for bread and broth. The smell of onions and smoke fills the small room. Her table is simple. Rough wood, a single candle, a plate with one slice left untouched. For my mother, she says softly. She'll find her way home by the light. You nod. It's not quite pagan, not quite Christian. It's something older than both. The human need to remember. You glance at the window and notice small paper crosses pinned to the glass, warding off wandering spirits. The church might have renamed the holiday, but fear still slips through the cracks.
every prayer, every chant, every crumb left on the sill, it's all part of the same cozy equation. Fear managed through ritual. And maybe that's the real secret of Halloween's survival. It wasn't stamped out by religion. It was adopted, softened, made respectable. Saints and spirits, angels and ancestors, all gathering around the same metaphorical fire. The bonfires of Samhain become candles in cathedrals. The ghost stories become hagiographies, and the offerings for the dead become acts of charity. Different symbols, same heartbeat. Some historians point out that medieval villagers saw no contradiction in attending Mass by day and whispering to their dead by night. The human brain, it seems, has room for heaven and haunting. You sip your broth and think, well, that's comforting. It's the kind of spiritual multitasking that defines humanity, believing two opposite things at once and somehow finding peace in the middle. You step back outside. The bells have stopped ringing, and the air feels cleaner, calmer. The church has claimed the calendar, but not the soul of the season. There's still that pulse of warmth and wonder beneath it all, a fire smoldering under the altar cloth. You look up at the first stars of the evening. Maybe the saints are watching. Maybe the old gods are too. Either way, someone's keeping you company. You pull your cloak close, feeling the cold edge of the air, and start down the road again, toward the next story, the next tradition, the next version of this same strange night.
The road you follow winds through a damp valley, lined with cottages that seem half asleep under the weight of autumn mist. It's the 1300s now, centuries past the bonfires of Samhain, yet their glow lingers faintly in memory. The church's influence has spread, and so have its customs. Halloween, or rather All Hallows' Eve, has become a gentler night. But don't be fooled. Beneath the hymns and candlelight, the old instincts still hum. You find yourself in a small English village. The streets are narrow and muddy, the kind that never quite dry. A bell rings somewhere beyond the fields, calling the faithful to prayer. But not everyone is headed to church tonight. You spot a group of children and a few poor laborers huddled near the crossroads, carrying small sacks and candles made from animal fat. One of them knocks on a cottage door and calls out, "Soul, soul, pray for the souls of the departed." The door creaks open. A weary woman hands them round cakes, small and fragrant, stamped with a cross. "God bless you," she says. They thank her and move on to the next house. You follow, curious. This is souling, a medieval tradition that turns remembrance into a kind of pilgrimage. The poor go door to door, offering prayers for the dead in exchange for food, drink, or those sweet soul cakes. A little sugar, a little salvation. Not a bad trade. You take a bite of one, and it tastes faintly of nutmeg and smoke. Cozy, if you ignore the existential backstory. Some historians say souling was the church's polite replacement for pagan offerings.
people still giving to the dead, just with better manners. Others argue it evolved naturally from local charity customs. Either way, it's the next step in Halloween's strange metamorphosis. Fear turned into generosity. But don't all in it for the piety. As night deepens, the mood lightens. The children sing verses that are equal parts prayer and threat. A soul cake, please good Mrs. One. If you haven't got a soul cake, a penny will do. If you haven't got a penny, then God bless you. A kind of spiritual loophole. Blessings or mischief, depending on how generous the householder feels. You can't help but smile. Even 700 years ago, humanity had already perfected the art of polite extortion. In one cottage, a candle burns low in the window. The family inside whispers names of their dead, one by one, as if calling roll in a classroom of ghosts. You watch in silence, the flicker of the flame making their faces glow gold and soft. A young boy falls asleep at the table, head on his folded arms. His mother strokes his hair and keeps whispering. It's tender, sad, but also peaceful. You step back into the cool night. The fog rolls in again, and the village bells toll for the dead. The sound is solemn, but not frightening. If anything, it's comforting. A reminder that everyone is remembered by someone, somewhere. Historians still argue whether souling directly inspired modern trick-or-treating. Some say yes, the rhyme, the door-to-door begging, the exchange of treats for spiritual good deeds, it all fits. Others insist it's just one of many threads that later wove into the modern custom. But you can see it clearly. The rhythm, the generosity, and the tiny spark of playfulness inside solemnity. That's Halloween's DNA right there. A few older men in rough coats are gathered by the church gate, sipping ale and debating the weather, or maybe theology. One of them leans toward you and grins, his teeth yellow in the candlelight. He says, "Better feed the souls, lad, or they'll come feed on you." He laughs, but the others cross themselves just in case. That's medieval humor for you, half jest, half genuine insurance. The night grows colder. You hear distant singing again, that same haunting tune carried on the wind. You imagine it echoing across countless villages, each with its own flavor of the same ritual. A song for the dead, a snack for the living, and a touch of mischief to keep the night from feeling too heavy. You realize something about this tradition. It's social glue. In a time when death was constant and unpredictable, when plagues swept through towns like bad weather, these little acts of remembrance gave people control. You couldn't stop death, but you could acknowledge it. You could sing, share bread, and feel that invisible bond with everyone else surviving the same fragile world. By the time the moon climbs high, the village quiets. The last solars drift home, bellies full, and candles burned low. The air smells faintly of wax and cinnamon. Somewhere a dog barks, and a shutter creaks in the wind. You pull your cloak tighter, feeling both comforted and haunted in equal measure. You think of how this tradition will someday evolve, how the cakes will turn to candy, the prayers to jokes, the humble songs to doorbell dings. The core will remain, though, a night for kindness disguised as fright, for connection dressed up in costume, for remembering that even in darkness, you're part of something shared. You pass the last cottage, its hearth glowing faintly through the cracks in the shutters. Someone still awake inside, whispering another name into the night. You pause, whisper one of your own, someone you miss, someone you'd like the wind to carry home, and for a moment, the air feels warm again. The fog moves in once more, soft as breath, and you follow it down the road toward new lights and new customs, waiting to be born.
You wake the next morning in another time, another place. The fog of the Middle Ages has thinned, replaced by the sharp air of the 16th century. The Reformation is spreading like wildfire, and with it a deep suspicion of old rituals. The world is shifting, monasteries closing, saints losing their halos, prayers to the dead quietly fading into forbidden territory. Halloween, or All Hallows' Eve, is caught in the middle. Some reformers denounce it as superstition, too Catholic, too ghostly. Yet, in the countryside, people still cling to it. Farmers, millers, washerwomen, they keep lighting their candles, baking their soul cakes, and whispering names of the departed, not out of rebellion, but habit. Memory is harder to erase than doctrine. You find yourself walking through a Scottish village at dusk. The air smells of peat smoke and rain-soaked earth. It's October 31st, and though no one calls it Samhain anymore, the bones of that ancient festival still show through. Children and young men wear rough masks made of animal hide, soot smeared across their cheeks. They go guising, a word that will one day become disguising. A group of them approaches a cottage door, knocking with sticks. When it opens, they perform a quick song, something silly and half-improvised, about ghosts dancing in graveyards. The homeowner laughs and tosses them oat cakes and nuts. In some houses, it's apples. In others, a coin or a sip of ale. You can almost see the invisible thread connecting souling to this. The prayer replaced by performance, the solemnity by play. Still, there's an edge of danger to the night. Halloween hasn't become all fun yet. It's still believed that spirits roam freely. In the fields, people light torches and swing them in wide circles to ward off witches and fairies. On hillsides, small bonfires burn to keep evil away from livestock. The line between reverence and fear is still thin. You pause near one of those fires. The villagers dance around it, laughing, their shadows leaping across the grass. Someone tosses a handful of herbs into the flames, mugwort, maybe, and the smoke twists upward in spirals that smell faintly of medicine and mystery. For a moment, you think you see faces in it, shapes that flicker and vanish. The villagers don't seem bothered. They've lived with ghosts all their lives. Across the green, an old woman watches from a doorway.
Her hair is gray, her eyes sharp as flint. Children avoid her. You hear whispers. She's a Cailleach, a witch, though no one says it loud enough for her to hear. She spits on the ground when the fires spark too high, muttering something about fools who don't know the old ways. You wonder if she remembers when the fires were for the harvest, not for fear. You almost ask her, but something about her gaze stops you. There's power there, quiet and unshaken. As the night deepens, she disappears inside, leaving the door slightly open. A single candle burns in her window long after the others have gone out. It's easy to forget how much of Halloween's evolution is shaped by fear, not just of ghosts, but of ideas. The Reformation brought new faiths, but also new anxieties. The line between religion and superstition blurred dangerously. Beliefs that once bound communities became reasons to accuse, to divide, to burn. You cross into the 17th century, where that fear reaches its fever pitch. The witch trials begin. Across Scotland, England, and the colonies of New England, women, and some men, are accused of dancing with the devil, of cursing cows, of flying through the night. Some are tortured, others hanged or drowned. Halloween becomes a strange paradox. The festival that once honored the spirits of the dead now creates new ones. Fear has replaced remembrance. The laughter of geysers fades, the glow of bonfires dims. In some towns, October 31st is spent not in celebration, but in prayer, pleas for deliverance from witchcraft and evil. And yet you notice something peculiar. Even as people condemn old customs, they can't let go entirely. The children still whisper stories. The young still dare each other to walk through graveyards. Apples are still bobbed in water, though now it's a game instead of a ritual. The spirit of mischief, ancient, irrepressible, keeps slipping through the cracks of fear and faith. In a dimly lit tavern, you overhear a conversation between two farmers. One complains about the priest forbidding guising. The other shrugs. "Can't stop the bairns from knocking," he says. "It's just fun is all." That single sentence carries centuries of defiance. You sit by the fire and sip weak ale, thinking of how customs survive not through grand declarations, but through ordinary stubbornness. A mother passing down a rhyme, a child wearing a mask for no reason other than, "That's what we do." Culture doesn't die easily. It just hides, waiting for a safer time to re-emerge. Outside, rain begins to fall. The flames in the hearth hiss and shrink, throwing soft shadows on the wall. You imagine how, generations from now, these same customs will cross oceans, take new forms, and wear new names. But the essence, the thrill of the unknown, the play between dark and light, will endure. As you leave the tavern, the village is quiet. The old woman's candle still burns in her window, steady and calm. For a moment, you swear you see her silhouette moving inside, whispering over something unseen. Maybe she's praying. Maybe she's remembering. Maybe she's simply waiting for the world to stop fearing the night. You walk on, past the last cottages, into the damp woods. The wind carries 1,000 echoes, laughter, whispers, the crackle of faraway fires. Halloween has survived plagues, reformations, and persecutions. It will survive this too. The night will always find a way to come alive again.
You emerge from the forest into a gentler century. The late 1700s, maybe early 1800s. The world feels warmer here.
less haunted by persecution and more by the soft hum of domestic life. The air smells like cider and wet leaves, and somewhere a fiddle plays a reel that seems to stitch the village together. Halloween, though still tinged with superstition, is cozy now, more about the harvest than the haunting. You wander toward a farmhouse lit by candlelight. Inside, a family gathers around a long wooden table. Bread, cheese, roasted apples, and steaming mugs of something golden fill the air with sweetness. The children laugh as their mother tells stories of witches and fairies, her tone playful, not fearful. The youngest boy shivers dramatically and hides under his blanket. The father grins, carving a turnip into a crude face. 2 holes for eyes, 1 for a mouth, the candlelight inside flickering like a sleepy heartbeat. This is how the bonfire becomes the hearth, how the village ritual becomes the family tradition. You can feel it. The old gods fading into bedtime stories, the dangerous night transformed into a safe, glowing room. Historians still argue whether this shift was born from Christian domestication or simple rural pragmatism. Maybe people were just tired of fearing the dark. Maybe, after generations of survival, they decided it was okay to make peace with the unknown, to invite it in for cider and cake. Outside, you hear laughter again, this time from a group of neighbors carrying torches. They're going nut-cracking, a curious Halloween custom where people toss nuts into the fire to divine love. Each nut represents a sweetheart. If it burns quietly, the love is true. If it pops, beware fickle hearts. You can't help but smile at the sight of grown adults gathered around a hearth, cheering for hissing acorns. Nearby, another group plays apple bobbing. They lean over a basin, hands behind their backs, trying to bite floating apples with mouths wide open, splashing water everywhere. Someone jokes that it's the most undignified form of fortune-telling ever invented. You laugh too, realizing that for once, Halloween is about joy, not dread. Still, traces of mystery linger. When the youngest daughter wanders too close to the window, her grandmother quickly pulls her back. "Don't look out after midnight," she warns softly. "That's when the dead walk by." The little girl nods solemnly, though you catch her sneaking a peek anyway. The balance between play and belief remains delicate. In the corner of the room sits a small altar. Nothing grand, just a few candles and a dish of bread. You notice that one chair at the table remains empty. When you ask why, the mother answers simply, "For those who can't be here anymore." There's no sadness in her voice, just quiet respect. It's in that moment you understand something profound. Halloween, beneath all its masks and mischief, is an act of remembrance. Not a celebration of fear, but a ritual of love disguised as folklore. A way to say, "We remember you." A way to bring the past into the present without sorrow. You take a sip of the family's cider. It's warm, sharp, and sweet, the taste of autumn captured in liquid form. The father tells you how the drink comes from the year's final apples, pressed after the harvest. He says the first sip is for the living, the second for the dead, and the third for luck. You raise your mug and drink all 3 in silence. Outside, the wind begins to pick up. The night carries that familiar hum again, the one that feels older than memory. It slips through the cracks in the windows, stirs the candle flames, and makes the carved turnip grin in a way that feels almost alive. You can sense that the boundary between worlds is still there, but now it's soft, like a curtain rather than a wall. The grandmother begins humming an old Gaelic song. No one understands the words anymore, but everyone joins in. The melody loops gently, rhythmic and low, until it sounds less like music and more like the heartbeat of the house itself. You find yourself lulled by it, by the crackle of the fire, the creak of the floorboards, the smell of spiced apples. This is the Halloween that rarely makes it into modern imagination. No witches flying over rooftops or skeletons rattling in graveyards, just the hush of autumn evenings, the rituals of comfort, the laughter that pushes back the chill. There's a story the grandmother tells you before bed. It's about a wandering spirit who knocks at the doors of the kind-hearted. Each time someone offers him bread, he blesses their harvest. But if a door stays shut, the crops wither. So always leave a piece of bread out, she says, patting your hand. You never know who's hungry tonight. As you step outside again, full and sleepy, the stars seem impossibly bright. The wind rustles through drying corn stalks, carrying whispers you can't quite make out. Somewhere far off, a church bell tolls midnight. You almost expect to see figures in the mist, but instead, there's only the comforting glow of windows, one by one, going dark. You realize that Halloween's power has never come from terror. It comes from togetherness, from warmth in cold seasons, light in darkness, laughter in uncertainty. The bonfires of Samhain have shrunk to candles on kitchen tables, but their meaning hasn't changed at all. You walk on down the road, the smell of cider still on your breath, the sound of that Gaelic song still in your head. Ahead lies a new world, a restless one, ready to reinvent old traditions once more. The fire, though smaller now, still burns.
You open your eyes to the rhythmic creak of a ship. The smell of salt water and damp wood fills your lungs. It's the 1840s now, and you're crossing the Atlantic. The deck sways beneath your boots as waves slap the hull and gulls cry overhead like restless ghosts. Around you, families huddle under rough wool blankets, clutching boxes and bundles, everything they own. They're Irish and Scottish immigrants, leaving famine and poverty behind. You hear scraps of Gaelic prayers, the low hum of worry, the rattle of spoons in tin cups. But amid the hardship, there's a flicker of something else. Memory. They've brought their songs, their games, and yes, their autumn rituals. Halloween is packed in their luggage, invisible but unbroken. As the ship rocks through the gray Atlantic, one old man lights a stub of candle in a hollowed-out turnip. He mutters a name, Jack, and smiles. You ask him why. He tells you the story of Stingy Jack, the trickster who cheated the devil, doomed to wander with only a burning coal inside his lantern. Keeps the bad spirits off, he says, tapping his temple. You suspect it also keeps homesickness away. When they land in America, it's not an easy welcome. Cities like New York and Boston overflow with tenements, poverty, and prejudice. But slowly, the Irish settle in, bringing Halloween with them. It begins quietly, bonfires in empty lots, small gatherings in boarding houses.
Then, little by little, the traditions take root in new soil. Here, in this vast new world, Halloween starts to transform again. The Irish and Scottish customs mix with local beliefs, Native American harvest festivals, English Die Fox night pranks, and even bits of African American folklore. The result? A strange, thrilling hybrid. Part ghost story, part neighborhood mischief, part autumn celebration. You find yourself walking through a small town in Pennsylvania around 1870. The leaves crunch under your feet and you hear laughter down the lane. Children, American-born but Irish at heart, carry homemade lanterns. Some wear masks of flour paste and fabric scraps. They go door to door, asking for treats or pulling silly pranks if none are given. A farmer chases them off with a broom, laughing more than he scolds. Historians still argue whether trick-or-treating truly began here, or whether it evolved separately in Canada or the Midwest. The truth is probably simpler. Kids everywhere love sugar and chaos, and Halloween gave them permission to have both. You pass a group of teenagers whispering ghost stories behind a barn. One tells of a headless horseman who haunts dark roads, a tale borrowed from Washington Irving's Sleepy Hollow. Another swears she saw lights flickering in the cemetery last night. You don't interrupt. You know that fear, told safely, binds people closer than comfort ever could. As the night deepens, you notice the shift in tone. This isn't the solemn saying of ancestors or the cozy hearth of Scottish farms. It's rowdier, freer, alive with the energy of youth. Fires burn in barrels, fiddles screech, cider flows, and laughter echoes through the streets. Halloween has found its American accent. Still, not everyone approves. Newspaper editorials in the late 19th century call it a night of vandalism and vulgarity. Church leaders frown on its pagan roots. One stern pastor writes that October 31st is the devil's holiday. Yet every year, the celebrations grow louder, brighter, more unavoidable. The people need release, after long hours in factories, after the silence of mourning lost ones. Halloween becomes the one night when the world turns upside down and it's okay to laugh at the dark. You stop at a farmhouse where a family hosts a parlor evening. Inside, candles flicker in carved pumpkins, real pumpkins, because America has plenty of them. The old turnips were too small and stringy for the job, but these bright orange gourds, perfect. Easier to carve, easier to carry, and frankly, much cuter. The hostess, a young woman with neatly pinned hair, invites guests to play fortune games. Apples hang from strings, and people try to bite them without using their hands. In another corner, a mirror stands draped in cloth. At midnight, she says, unmarried women can lift the cloth and glimpse their future husbands' faces. The guests giggle, half believing, half pretending. You notice how easily the sacred has turned playful here. The spiritual veil between worlds has thinned, but no one trembles. They flirt, laugh, and toast to the future. The firelight glows against carved pumpkins on the windowsill, their faces silly rather than sinister. This is how Halloween survives yet again, by adapting. Every generation reshapes it to fit their fears, their joys, their needs. The famine survivors' sorrow softens into nostalgia. The old spirits become household decorations. And somehow, it still feels right. As you leave the farmhouse, the night is full of flickering orange light and the scent of burning leaves. Down the street, a little boy in a burlap mask holds his pumpkin lantern high, whispering something to it. Maybe a wish, maybe a secret. The candle inside trembles, then steadies, as though answering back. You realize you're watching a ritual older than memory, but made new again, stitched together by laughter and longing. A tradition reborn not by priests or scholars, but by people who simply missed the warmth of the fire. The wind shifts, carrying with it a sound both ancient and utterly modern. Children laughing in the dark. And somewhere deep inside, you recognize it for what it is. Not mischief, not mayhem, but belonging.
You blink, and the faint candlelight of that 19th century farmhouse flares into something harsher. Street lamps. The year is around 1925. The air smells not of peat or cider, but of gasoline and smoke. You're standing at the corner of a small Midwestern town, and Halloween has gone wild. It's supposed to be a night of fun, but mischief has turned into full-blown chaos. Teenagers soap shop windows, unhinge gates, and tip over outhouses. A group of boys roll a wagon into the creek, laughing until someone shouts that the police are coming. Firecrackers pop like tiny thunderclaps, echoing off the brick walls of corner stores. Cabbage night, they call it in some towns, gate night in others. Either way, the spirit of Samhain has taken on a rowdy, distinctly American flavor. The tricks have outnumbered the treats. You wander through the commotion, stepping carefully over smashed pumpkins. Adults shake their heads in disapproval. One shopkeeper mutters that Halloween should be banned altogether. And honestly, you can't entirely blame him. The Great Depression is looming, and people are in no mood for smashed fences and stolen cabbages. But here's where things get interesting. Out of all that chaos comes the modern Halloween we know today. The solution doesn't arrive from law enforcement or the pulpit. It comes from candy companies, scout troops, and neighborhood mothers with patience and sugar to spare. Give the kids something to do, one woman says in an old radio broadcast, and they'll stop tearing up the town. So communities begin organizing parties in church basements and school gyms. Children carve pumpkins, play apple bobbing, and march in little parades. The mischief starts to fade as sugar takes center stage. You pause outside a general store. A bright poster in the window reads, "Halloween Party. Prizes for costume and best jack-o'-lantern." Inside, a clerk arranges neat rows of wrapped caramels and peppermint sticks. The packaging is cheerful, orange and black. He tells you the big candy companies are starting to notice that one night of the year when every child wants sweets, and they intend to make the most of it. Historians still argue whether it was Hershey, Mars, or a dozen smaller confectioners who first saw Halloween's potential. But whoever it was, they were right. The treat had finally found its place beside the trick. You follow the scent of chocolate to a neighborhood where porch lights glow warmly. Children in simple costumes, bedsheet ghosts, paper bag masks, cardboard witches' hats, go door to door with baskets in hand. Instead of coins or nuts, they are offered candy, some of it homemade, some store-bought. It's small, sweet diplomacy. The old mischief has been transformed into ritual, a knock, a smile, a reward. The first woman who opens her door says, "Happy Halloween," as if she's rehearsing a new language. The children shout it back. You can practically feel the tradition locking into place like a missing puzzle piece. Not everyone's convinced. One editorial in the Chicago Tribune complains that candy is ruining the moral fiber of youth. Another says Halloween has lost its meaning. But others argued the opposite, that this new, gentler celebration finally returns Halloween to its roots, a way to bring the community together, to share light in the dark. You stop by a park where a group of parents have built a small bonfire. It's supervised, of course. The fire crackles, and the children toast marshmallows on sticks.
Someone starts telling a ghost story about a haunted railroad crossing. The little ones squeal and hide their faces, but they can't stop listening. That's the thing about Halloween. No matter how civilized it becomes, it always keeps a faint whisper of danger. Just enough fear to make the warmth feel sweeter. A boy sits beside you, chewing taffy thoughtfully. "Do you think ghosts still come out tonight?" he asks. You tell him maybe they do, but now they prefer houses with candy. He grins, satisfied with that logic. By the late 1930s, the phrase "trick or treat" starts appearing in print. It's a simple exchange that carries centuries of evolution, from Celtic offerings to medieval soul cakes to Irish guising, and now candy on suburban porches. What began as a negotiation with spirits has become a contract between neighbors. You stroll past a row of tidy houses, watching families laugh together on porches decorated with paper skeletons. The night hums with energy, but not menace. Halloween has found its balance again. Somewhere in the distance, a radio plays Glenn Miller's Moonlight Serenade. The song drifts through the crisp air, mingling with the laughter of children. The ghosts, you imagine, must feel at home in this, invited, not feared. Still, a few holdouts grumble that Halloween has gone soft. No more daring pranks, no real scares, just candy and giggles. But they're missing the point. The mischief hasn't died. It's simply mellowed into tradition. The bonfire became a porch light. The masked trickster became a smiling child. The offering for the dead became a chocolate bar. You glance back one last time as the town settles into calm. Porch lights blink off one by one. Somewhere a pumpkin's candle flickers, then dies, leaving only the scent of wax and smoke. And yet the warmth lingers. Halloween has survived witch hunts, famines, reformations, and riots. Now at last it has survived its own chaos. It's ready for its next transformation, one that will make it bigger, brighter, and strangely glamorous. You take a deep breath, tasting sugar in the night air, and keep walking toward the flicker of neon in the distance. The candy age has begun. By the time you reach the next decade, Halloween has discovered its spotlight. It's the 1950s now, the age of television, glossy magazines, and suburban lawns trimmed within an inch of perfection. The war is over, optimism hums through the air like electricity. And in the distance, you can already hear it, the sound of cellophane crinkling. You find yourself in a tidy neighborhood where every driveway has a Chevrolet and every porch has a jack-o'-lantern glowing a perfect camera-ready orange. The smell of caramel corn drifts down the street. A group of kids in store-bought costumes runs past you, plastic pumpkins bouncing in their hands. "Trick or treat!" they shout, their voices bright and confident. This is new. You notice their costumes aren't the ragtag mix of bed sheets and soot-smudged faces you saw a few decades ago. These are shiny, colorful, and, if you look closely, made of something flammable enough to be slightly terrifying. Cardboard masks of movie monsters and cowboys, satin capes with printed logos, Frankenstein, Dracula, Little Bo Peep, all lined up neatly in boxes at the local department store. You wander inside one of those stores, the kind that smells faintly of popcorn and perfume. A bright orange sign reads, "Halloween Headquarters, everything you need for October 31st. Racks of costumes sway under fluorescent lights. Plastic masks stare back at you from the shelves, their elastic bands stretched tight. Witches, spacemen, superheroes. The clerk beams proudly and says they sell out every year.
We used to make 'em at home, she says, but now everyone wants the real thing. Historians still argue whether this moment, the mass production of Halloween costumes, marked the holiday's cultural peak or its commercial surrender. Either way, you can't help admiring how quickly the festival reinvented itself again. The handmade charm of earlier Halloweens has turned cinematic. It's less about keeping ghosts away and more about playing one for the night. You step back outside, and the street has become a stage. Porch lights glow like footlights. Children parade in packs, their paper capes fluttering. Parents stand at doors with candy bowls, smiling for the camera flash. The night hums with laughter and the rustle of candy wrappers. And then you hear something else, the faint, tinny jingle of television music floating from an open window. A horror movie marathon. Frankenstein, the Mummy, Dracula, each monster stitched into the mythology of Halloween. The living room glows blue. Families gathered around black and white screens, popcorn bowls and laps. Fear, once something to hide from, has become entertainment. You can't help but grin. Humanity has managed the impossible, to turn the stuff of nightmares into a comfy evening pastime. You pass a drive-in theater on the edge of town. The marquee reads, "Spooktacular Double Feature, The Blob and House on Haunted Hill." Cars fill the lot, fog from soda cups drifting in the projector light. Couples huddle under blankets, pretending not to jump at the scary parts. When a ghost bursts through the screen, someone screams and then laughs. The fear is delicious because it's safe. Back on the sidewalks, Halloween has become a postcard of Americana. Warm, silly, just spooky enough. You stop by one house where a mother in pearls hands out candy corn from a crystal bowl. "Be careful crossing the street, sweetie," she tells a vampire no taller than her knees. You overhear a father joking, "If we keep this up, the kids will be sugared to death by Christmas." He's only half wrong. Candy production has boomed since the war, and Halloween is its golden ticket. Advertisements in Life magazine show smiling children holding chocolate bars like trophies. "Treat your ghosts right," one headline says, above a glossy photo of a candy bowl shaped like a pumpkin. Still, beneath the consumer gloss, a certain warmth glows. You can feel it in the sound of distant laughter, the soft crunch of leaves underfoot, the glow of carved pumpkins guarding each porch. There's a ritual rhythm to it all. Knock, greet, reward. It's ancient in spirit, modern in form. You stop beside a little boy in a skeleton costume. His mask is slightly crooked, and he's clutching a paper bag already bursting with candy. "You think real skeletons walk around tonight?" he asks, his voice muffled. "Maybe," I whisper back. "But if they do, I bet they're jealous of your mask." He laughs, and the sound rings out, pure and fearless. That, you realize, is the secret to Halloween's survival. Every age finds a way to make peace with its fears. Later that night, you find yourself standing at the edge of a cul-de-sac. The trick-or-treaters have gone home. The pumpkins flicker low. Somewhere, a dog barks, and a single leaf drifts across the pavement. The night feels softer now. Familiar. Safe. You close your eyes and listen to the hum of refrigerators, the murmur of television sets, and the faint jangle of candy in paper bags. The ghosts, if they're still out there, must be smiling. For once, the living have stolen their night and turned it into a celebration of light, laughter, and make-believe. It's hard to think of how far it's come, from ancient Samhain fires on Celtic hills to this suburban twilight.
The costumes have changed, the fears have changed, but the pulse underneath it all hasn't. It's still about crossing boundaries between life and death, reality and imagination, shadow and glow. You smile. Maybe, in their own plastic-masked way, these kids understand that better than anyone.
You wake to another October evening, but the world around you has shifted again. The tidy suburbs of the 1950s have faded into the darker hues of the late 1960s and 70s. Halloween still hums along, but something in the air feels different, more electric, more restless. You walk through a neighborhood where the lawns are wilder now, where porch lights glow through a haze of cigarette smoke and vinyl record static. A jack-o'-lantern sits crookedly on a step, its grin jagged and mischievous. The candy bowls are still there, but the edges of innocence have frayed a little. It's the age of horror. Not the polite kind you saw on black and white screens, but the raw, unnerving kind that crawls straight into the collective imagination. Night of the Living Dead flickers on televisions across the country, its grainy zombies staggering through Pennsylvania fields. The Exorcist has made headlines for causing fainting spells in theaters. And in a few short years, a quiet little film called Halloween will redefine fear forever. You walk through a drive-in where a crowd sits rapt, faces pale in the blue light of the screen. A masked figure moves silently through a suburban house, the soundtrack pulsing like a heartbeat. Someone gasps. Someone else laughs nervously. When the killer appears behind the door, half the audience screams in unison and then claps. The strange thing about this new Halloween isn't the violence on screen. It's the thrill that people seem to crave, the shared jolt of being scared together. Once upon a time, fear was something to banish with candles and salt. Now it's entertainment, ritualized and safe, like a carnival ride that stops just before the fall. You leave the theater and wander downtown. Shop windows glow orange, filled with rubber masks, plastic pitchforks, and paper decorations that flutter in the breeze. The homemade charm of the past has been replaced by latex realism. Monsters now have bloodshot eyes and drooling fangs. In one window, you spot a mask labeled Michael Myers the Shape. Its blank, pale face stares through the glass with uncanny calm. You pause, remembering the jack-o'-lanterns of the 1930s. Simple, smiling, harmless. This is different. Halloween has found a darker mirror. Yet the crowds love it. Every year the masks get more realistic, the haunted houses more elaborate. What began as whispers of the spirit world has become a booming industry of fear. There's something deeply human about it. The desire to stand on the edge of danger, to flirt with the abyss, but never fall in. You follow a group of teenagers down a quiet street. They're carrying pillowcases, not candy buckets, their costumes hastily thrown together. One has a ghost sheet, another a plastic vampire cape. They laugh too loud, throwing handfuls of shaving cream at each other. Come on, let's hit Maple Street. Old Man Carson is giving out full-size Snickers. You can't help but smile. Even as the horror industry grows, the heart of Halloween remains. This ritual of movement, mischief, and sugar-fueled adventure. The kids don't think about the Celts or the saints or the movies. They just know this is their night. As you follow them,
The houses grow darker, quieter. You hear the crunch of leaves, the hiss of a can of silly string, the occasional bark of a dog. Somewhere, a porch light flickers out. One of the kids says, half joking, "That's when the real ghosts come out." The others laugh, but they walk a little faster. Later that night, you find yourself near a suburban backyard where a group of adults is hosting a Halloween party. The decorations are plastic skeletons and flashing orange lights, but there's something ancient in the laughter. Someone tells a ghost story around a fire pit. Another hands out apple cider in paper cups. The radio hums with Fleetwood Mac, and the smoke smells faintly of burnt sugar. You realize something important then. Halloween has always adapted to the times, but it never really loses its soul. Even in this era of slasher films and plastic gore, the same heartbeat runs underneath. The bonfires of Samhain have turned into backyard fires, the spirit masks into movie monsters, but it's all the same impulse, to face the darkness without letting it swallow you in. The party quiets for a moment when someone turns off the lights. A woman stands near the fire and begins to speak, her voice low and theatrical. Once there was a woman who heard scratching at her window every night. The group leans in, smiling, waiting for the jump scare they know is coming. The story ends with a shriek and a laugh, and someone throws a handful of leaves into the fire, sending sparks spinning into the night. You close your eyes. The sound of laughter mixes with the hiss of the fire, the low hum of crickets, the distant beat of a stereo. It's not sacred, not solemn, but it's real. The living are still gathering in the dark, still telling stories to keep the night at bay. And maybe that's the truest version of Halloween there is. Not a perfect echo of the past, but a living ritual, constantly reinvented. The ghosts no longer walk the streets. They watch from the shadows instead, perhaps amused that humans still carry on their old traditions, masked, noisy, and entirely unafraid. As you turn to leave, you glance up at the night sky. The moon is high, ringed with a faint halo of mist. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wails, then fades. The night stretches on, rich and strange, full of memory. Halloween, you think, has finally come home to itself.
You wake up in the soft light of a modern kitchen, where the scent of cinnamon and pumpkin wafts through the air. The calendar says October again, but now Halloween feels different. Less about fear, more about comfort. Your surroundings are cozy rather than creepy. Fairy lights strung around a window, a mug of pumpkin spice latte steaming on the counter, a cat lazily stretching on the windowsill. The season that once called for bonfires and exorcisms now invites blankets and scented candles. You scroll through your phone and see it everywhere. Hashtag spooky season, pastel pumpkins, and skeleton mugs smiling beside espresso machines. Halloween, once raw and unpredictable, has gone hygge. You sip your drink and smile at the irony. The night of restless spirits has turned into a celebration of coziness. Fear has been repackaged into aesthetics, black sweaters, soft lighting, a Netflix marathon of hocus pocus. You can almost hear the ghosts of Samhain chuckling in disbelief. But beneath the pumpkin spice foam, you still sense the old bones of the holiday. The idea hasn't vanished, it's just mellowed,
aged like good cider. People still crave connection with the unseen, but now they find it through nostalgia, not ritual. You step outside into a gentle evening. The air is cool, and the streets glow amber beneath porch lights. Children are still trick-or-treating, though now their parents follow behind with phones raised for photos. The costumes are cute, little witches with glitter wands, superheroes in LED suits. The terror of old Halloween has been softened into family fun, though the thrill still flickers in the shadows. At one house, a dad in a Dracula cape hands out chocolate bars while a Bluetooth speaker hums spooky organ music. "Take two, but watch out for ghosts," he says. The kids giggle, sprinting off down the street. You can't help but laugh. It's the same game humanity has played for thousands of years. Pretend to fear what you actually love. Later, you passed a row of carved pumpkins glowing on doorsteps. Some are classic faces, others are elaborate art. Cats, moons, entire haunted mansions etched in orange flesh. Their light flickers like candlelit prayers. You think of the Celts leaving food for wandering spirits, the medieval soul cakes, the Irish turnips. The tradition remains, a soft glow for whoever might wander by. You stroll past a coffee shop decorated with cobwebs and orange lights. A sign in the window reads, "Cozy Frights, Warm Nights." Inside, a group of college students huddles over laptops, sipping autumn-colored drinks, their conversation full of half-serious ghost stories. One swears their dorm room door opens by itself. Another says they saw a face in the window of the old library. They laugh, shiver, and go back to their essays. Even skepticism has grown gentler with the season. Once people truly believed spirits crossed the veil on this night. Now most shrug and say, "I don't believe in ghosts, but I still sleep with the light on." Historians still argue whether this mellowed version of Halloween is a loss or a gain. Some say it's been sanitized, robbed of its mystery. Others say it's proof of resilience, a tradition that adapts without dying. You wander into a living room where a family watches It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. The lights are low, the couch piled with blankets, the hum of the TV comforting. The smallest child is half asleep, clutching a plastic pumpkin pail. The parents exchange a tired smile, the kind that says, "They'll remember this." And they will. Not the fear, but the feeling. The safety of being together while the wind rattles the windows outside. Outside again, you pass by a quiet park. The moonlight bathes the swings in silver. Somewhere in the distance, a group of teenagers sits around a portable speaker, playing low, lo-fi beats and sharing ghost stories. Their voices are soft, reverent even. One girl says her grandmother used to leave a candle by the window every Halloween for anyone who's lost on their way home. That line stays with you, because maybe after all this time, Halloween isn't about death or fear, it's about welcome. The bonfires of the Celts, the prayers of the medieval faithful, the pumpkins of modern porches, all were invitations, signals to the dark that it's okay to come closer, but not too close. You pause on a bench and look up at the stars. The night feels kind, almost domestic. The ghosts aren't gone, they've just found a gentler place to stay. In every glowing window, every candle flicker, every sugary treat shared between strangers, there's a whisper of the old magic, a reminder that even fear, when tamed, can be warm. A breeze rustles through the trees, carrying the scent of smoke and caramel. Somewhere wind chimes ring softly. You imagine the ancient Celts hearing that sound, believing it to be the voices of ancestors. You imagine them smiling to know that thousands of years later, people still light fires, still tell stories, still feel a chill that somehow soothes rather than terrifies.
You head home through the glow of streetlights, your steps slow, your breath visible in the cold. The air tastes like wood smoke and sugar. Halloween has become cozy, yes, but not empty. Its heart still beats beneath the sweaters and lattes. It's still a night when the world feels a little thinner, when you can almost sense unseen company beside you, quiet and harmless. And maybe that's the secret. Halloween survived not by scaring us, but by comforting us, by teaching us that even darkness can feel like home if you keep a candle burning.
You wake to find yourself drifting, neither here nor there, as though the world itself has grown softer around the edges. The pumpkins, costumes, and suburban porches fade into mist, and you realize Halloween is not alone in its tenderness. Across the globe, countless cultures cradle the same instinct, to reach across the veil, to whisper to the gone, to turn fear into familiarity. Your first stop is Mexico. It's late October, and the streets of Oaxaca bloom with color. You wander through markets fragrant with marigolds and sweetbread. Everywhere you look, there's brightness. Paper flags fluttering overhead, sugar skulls stacked high, candles flickering like golden stars. Children paint their faces in cheerful skulls, not to mock death, but to welcome it. You follow a family through a narrow street toward the cemetery. They carry baskets of fruit, flowers, and tamales. When they reach the graves, they begin to laugh, not the nervous laugh of the frightened, but the warm, familial kind that fills the night. They clean the tombs, place food on them, light candles. Someone strums a guitar. Someone else pours a little tequila onto the soil for Grandpa. You sit down among them and watch as memory becomes celebration. Dia de Muertos is not about ghosts, it's about guests. The line between the living and the dead isn't a wall here, it's a dinner table. And as the moon rises, you almost expect the ancestors to arrive, quietly, gratefully, as if drawn by the scent of home cooking. Historians still argue whether Dia de Muertos descends from ancient Aztec rituals or grew independently alongside Catholic All Souls' Day. But either way, it carries the same heartbeat as Samhain, the belief that the boundary between worlds can be both respected and softened. From Mexico's music, you drift east, across the Pacific, and land in Japan. The air feels different, humid, hushed. It's August here, the time of Obon, another festival for the departed. You follow the glow of paper lanterns as families gather by rivers and temples. Bells chime in the distance, incense threads the air. A family kneels before a small altar, placing offerings of rice and fruit. The grandmother whispers the names of those who have passed, her voice like a lullaby. Nearby, children chase fireflies, their laughter echoing under the lanterns. It's solemn and joyful all at once, an emotional balance that feels ancient and precise. You help launch a floating lantern onto the river. It drifts slowly away, joining dozens of others, glowing softly like fire spirits on water. The current carries them downstream, out of sight. It feels like a gentle goodbye, not forever, but until next year. You think back to Halloween, the jack-o'-lanterns, the soft porch lights,
the quiet prayers for wandering souls. Different names, different stories, but the same message. We remember you. We welcome you. Then you travel again, this time to Eastern Europe. In a small Romanian village, the people prepare for Sambata Mortoros, the Saturday of the Dead. Women bake loaves of bread and light candles at windows. Men clean the graves and leave jugs of wine nearby. The atmosphere is practical, grounded, yet full of tenderness. One old man says, "We don't fear the dead. They are part of our family, just living in another room." It's a sentiment you've heard echoed in whispers across continents. Humans everywhere, it seems, can't quite bear to let go. We build rituals, light candles, cook food, not for superstition's sake, but to keep love tangible. From Europe, you drift east again, to the Philippines, where Undas unfolds beneath the tropical heat. Families crowd cemeteries, setting up tents and picnics among the tombstones. There's karaoke, shared meals, even card games. The air buzzes with laughter and cooking oil. It's a reunion, not a mourning. Someone hands you a plate of pancit and says, "For the dead, but also for the living." You take a bite. It's delicious, warm, and grounding. For a moment, the centuries collapse. Samhain, All Souls, Dia de Muertos, Oban, Undas, they're all the same story told in different dialects of light. Each one turns fear into fellowship. Each one says, yes, the darkness exists, but it doesn't get the final word. You find yourself musing as you walk through the night. Maybe all these traditions survive because they offer something we still need, a way to make peace with what we can't control, the afterlife, the unknown, the inevitable end. Instead of hiding from it, we decorate it, feed it, laugh with it. At a stop in Ireland once more, the homeland of Samhain, you stand by a cliff overlooking the dark Atlantic. The waves crash below, timeless and heavy. A small group of people gathers nearby, holding candles. They don't call it Samhain anymore, but the spirit of it lingers. Someone plays a slow fiddle tune. The sound mixes with the wind and sea. You close your eyes and listen. The melody feels both mournful and comforting. It's the same paradox you've heard everywhere, sadness wrapped in celebration. It's not about fear of ghosts, it's about gratitude we ever get to live at all. You remember the line from earlier, the girl whose grandmother left a candle for anyone lost on their way home. You realize now that's what all these festivals are. A nightlight for the world. So you let the idea settle in your chest, warm and heavy. Maybe Halloween didn't invent comfort in the face of death. It just learned to package it in pumpkins and candy. Maybe that's why it endures, because every culture, in its own language, keeps whispering the same thing into the dark. You're not forgotten. You're still one of us. The wind picks up. You pull your coat tighter and smile. All around the world, lanterns glow, candles flicker, and stories continue. Reminders that even the end can be beautiful if you light it gently.
You find yourself in a quiet library late at night, the kind where dust glitters in the lamplight, and silence hums like an old machine. Shelves tower around you, heavy with books about myth, folklore, and the human mind. You trace your fingers across their spines, thinking about everything you've seen: bonfires, lanterns, candy, and cozy sweaters. And somewhere between the pages, you begin to realize that Halloween isn't just about spirits or history, it's also about science. Why do humans love being scared in the first place? You pull out a book on psychology, its pages soft and yellowed. Fear, it says, is an ancient survival tool, your body's built-in alarm system. When you sense danger, your heart pounds, your pupils widen, and your brain floods with adrenaline. It's the same response your ancestors felt when they heard a twig snap in the dark. But here's the twist. Your brain doesn't just hate fear, it craves it. Controlled fear, that is. The kind you can walk away from. Roller coasters, haunted houses, scary movies. They all let you flirt with danger while staying perfectly safe. Your body gets the rush, your mind gets the relief. That combination releases dopamine, the same neurotransmitter that fires when you eat chocolate or fall in love. So, when you sit in a dark theater watching a masked villain creep closer, your brain is basically saying, "This is awful. I love it. Do it again." That's the same chemical cocktail that fueled ghost stories by the fire in medieval villages, or the eerie games played by Celtic children under Samhain's moon. You realize that fear, in moderation, is one of humanity's oldest forms of pleasure. Historians still argue whether Halloween's enduring charm comes from its spiritual depth or its psychological payoff. Maybe it's both. Maybe humans have always needed one night a year to let their anxieties wear masks and dance. You think about the modern world, its constant noise, endless screens, relentless pace. Real life can be scarier than any monster movie. Bills, deadlines, health scares, heartbreaks. The ghosts we face now don't rattle chains, they send notifications. And yet, every October, people willingly invite fear back in, but on their terms. A movie, a costume, a laugh in the dark. It's therapeutic in a strange way. You close the psychology book and open another, this one on sociology. It argues that Halloween isn't just a personal experience, it's a collective ritual. A rare time when society lets everyone drop their masks by putting on new ones. A child dresses as a superhero and feels powerful. A shy adult puts on a vampire cape and becomes bold for a night. It's a sanctioned dose of chaos, a reminder that it's okay to play, to pretend, to be someone else for a while. You smile, remembering the kids running through the streets with pillowcases full of candy. In that sugar-fueled chaos, you can see a microcosm of humanity itself. Order meeting disorder, fear meeting joy, life meeting death. And somehow, it all balances out. You wander deeper into the library, finding a small reading room filled with flickering candles. Someone has left a notebook open on the table. Inside, a handwritten note reads, "Humans fear the dark not because it hides monsters, but because it hides meaning." You sit down, letting that line sink in. Maybe that's why Halloween has always comforted more than frightened. It gives the darkness meaning. It turns the unknown into something you can hold, decorate, even laugh at.
You think about the cozy modern Halloween again, the candles, the soft music, the pumpkin scent. Beneath all that calm is a kind of alchemy, turning fear into warmth. Your ancestors faced the darkness with bonfires. You face it with battery-powered candles and cinnamon. Different tools, same instinct. You glance out the window. The night sky is clear, moonlight pooling on the floor like silver ink. Somewhere outside, you imagine kids still trick-or-treating, the sound of laughter drifting through the crisp air. You picture college students watching old horror films, couples carving pumpkins, someone scrolling through ghost stories online. Millions of tiny acts of comfort in the face of the unknown. And maybe, you think, that's what makes Halloween truly beautiful. Not the masks or the candy, but the chemistry behind it all. The way your body calms itself after a scare. The way the heart slows down once the monster's gone. The relief that says, I'm still here. You flip through another page and find a photograph of an old Samhain bonfire. The caption reads, "To light a fire in the dark is to declare, I choose to stay alive." That line hits harder than you expect, because that's what every candle, every lantern, every glowing pumpkin really means. A quiet, ancient defiance against the cold. So when you next watch a scary movie or walk past a neighbor's yard full of fake tombstones and fog machines, remember this. Your fear isn't weakness. It's proof of your aliveness. You're wired to jump, to laugh, to breathe, to recover. You're wired to turn shadows into stories. The library clock chimes softly. Midnight. You stand, stretch, and feel a calm weight settle over you. Halloween's not just a night of ghosts. It's a night of balance, between fear and comfort, between life and death, between what's real and what's imagined. And somewhere deep in your brain, a very old part of you, the same that once huddled near a Samhain fire, still whispers, the dark is okay. We've made peace with it.
You blink, and the world seems to ripple like candlelight. The library fades, and the old Celtic hills return, mist rolling over the heather, the air thick with wood smoke and memory. You're back where it all began, back to the fire. The night hums with ancient quiet. Bonfires flicker on distant ridges, and between them you can almost see figures moving, villagers long gone, their silhouettes caught in the dance of light. The smell of peat and smoke fills your lungs. Somewhere nearby, a drum keeps a slow, steady rhythm, like a heartbeat. You sit by the fire, just as you did in the beginning, and realize how far you've traveled, through centuries of belief and adaptation, through fear and fun, through sorrow and celebration. Halloween has changed faces 100 times, but its soul hasn't aged a day. Across the flames, a woman tosses herbs into the embers. Sage, rowan, maybe a pinch of salt. She doesn't speak, but you understand the gesture. A blessing for what's gone, and a protection for what's still here. You glance around and see echoes of every era blending into one another. The Celts with their torches, the medieval solars carrying bread, the Irish immigrants carving turnips by lamplight, the kids of the 1950s racing between porches, the barista sprinkling cinnamon on foam, all of them here, layered like the rings of a tree trunk, growing from the same root. You watch the fire and think of all those tiny flames across the world, the lanterns on rivers in Japan, the candles on Mexican graves, the jack-o'-lanterns on American steps, different languages of light, all saying the same thing. We remember, we care, we're still connected. It hits you that Halloween was never really about the dead. It was about the living, how we hold on, how we find comfort in the dark, how we turn endings into invitations. Every flicker of flame is an act of tenderness disguised as fear. You pick up a stick and stir the fire. Sparks leap into the air, swirling like tiny souls. The smoke curls upward, carrying whispers of laughter, songs, the rustle of old costumes, the crunch of leaves beneath shoes. Each sound is a memory alive again for one night. A chill breeze drifts past you. You half expect a ghost to appear, but none does. Instead, there's something subtler, a feeling like being watched fondly. You think of all the people who once celebrated this night and are now part of its quiet history. Maybe they're still here, in the warmth, in the scent, in the hush between crackles. You smile. "Nice to see you again," you whisper to the dark. Behind you, someone starts telling a story. Their voice is low, calm, almost hypnotic. It's about a traveler who walked through time, watching Halloween grow from a night of fear to a night of peace. You realize the story is yours. The fire burns lower, and you pulled your coat tighter. The stars are clearer now, cold and sharp above the hills. You can almost see your breath mingling with the smoke, life and air and warmth, all fleeting, all precious. You think of everything humanity has built just to make the night feel safe. Masks, laughter, sugar, stories, tools of comfort, shields of joy, all to remind ourselves that darkness isn't the enemy, it's the other half of the day. Historians still argue whether Halloween is pagan or Christian, Irish or American, ancient or modern. But sitting here, none of that seems to matter. You understand now that it's human, entirely, beautifully human. You let your gaze linger on the fire one last time. The logs have collapsed into glowing embers, their light gentle and steady. Around you, the voices have softened, the drums have stopped. Only the crackle remains, the same sound that's been echoing through every October for thousands of years. You close your eyes. The warmth touches your skin like a lullaby. And for the first time tonight, you feel completely at peace. The fire fades to a dim orange, and the world grows quiet again. The hills, the laughter, the centuries, all dissolve into a soft blur, leaving only stillness. You take a long breath and feel your body loosen, your thoughts slowing, your heartbeat syncing with the quiet rhythm of the night. If you listen closely, you can still hear it, the faint crackle of an old fire, far away but comforting. It's the same sound the Celts once heard, the same warmth families felt as they carved pumpkins or lit candles for those they loved. It's not about ghosts anymore. It's about remembering that even in darkness, there's always light. The night is long, but gentle. The stars blink above you, and the air feels cool against your skin. The ghosts have gone to rest, the streets have emptied, and somewhere a single candle still flickers in a window. You think about everything this night stands for: memory, laughter, fear, warmth. You realize that Halloween isn't about what's frightening. It's about what's forgiven. It's the one night when the world allows itself to pause, to let the past and present share the same breath. So you take one more deep inhale, feeling the smoke and chill and comfort all at once. And as you exhale, the sound blends with the night, the oldest lullaby there is. The last ember winks out, leaving only the soft hum of the wind. And in that hush, you feel it, calm, weightless, safe. The world has gone quiet, but you're still here. Sleep well, traveler. The fire's gone out, but the warmth remains.